So I have a confession to make. As a cardiologist, I used to think that I had health and longevity all figured out. I mean, after all, I was a runner, not just a runner, but a marathon runner. Here you can see all of the other runners with their hands up high as they're crossing the finish line. I'm the guy there who looks like he's about ready to pass out after having just run 26 miles through New York City. But because I was a marathon runner, I felt like I could freely partake of all the free bagels, cream cheese, donuts that every hospital I've ever worked at across the US freely gives to all of their physicians. Yes, donuts. Not just one donut, two donuts. One donut to go with my breakfast, one that I would keep hidden in the operating room. Well, because the donuts would be gone by about 10 a.m. Somehow I justified all of this in my brain that because I was a runner, a marathon runner, no doubt, I could outrun any of the effects these foods may have on me. Or at least I thought I could, until I had a health crisis at age 44. At age 44, I had developed an autoimmune disease, eosinophilic esophagitis. I was overweight, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. It hurt to work. Long surgeries in the operating room hurt, and I was even starting to consider whether or not I needed to consider an early retirement. But most importantly, I could no longer exercise. It hurt too much. And so I had no way of burning off the crazy amounts of calories that I was consuming every day at my hospital. So this was me. This was my default future, which is no different than most Americans. The average life expectancy is 79. Yet the average American is disabled by 69. That means they're spending the last 10 years of their life going from doctor to doctor, being prescribed medication after medication. The sad thing is, studies suggest that most of us can live to age 90 in good health if we just don't screw things up. And so in essence, we're leaving 21 good years of life on the table. And in my case, it was a lot more than 21 years on the path that I was on. I speak fluent Chinese, and as a Chinese speaker, I'm frequently asked to give lectures at the major medical conferences throughout China on my area of expertise, which is atrial fibrillation. And on one of these trips to China, I shared with a colleague some of the health challenges that I was going through and considering potentially an early medical retirement when they shared with me that I first needed to visit China's longevity village, a place in China with the highest percentage of centenarians in the world, an area that's cut off from the rest of China and the rest of the world until just recently. A place where they live remarkably long, healthy lives free from all the common medical problems and medications that we have here in the US. Where is this place? It's about 50 miles north of the Vietnam border. It's a very tropical area surrounded by mountains. And the bridge, as you go in, this was at one point the only bridge into the village. It was a rickety bridge. My children used to love jumping up and down, try to bounce their siblings into the water. Fortunately, no one went in. But this began the first of many family journeys there, spending summers there, a 5-year research project to understand what was behind this remarkable health and longevity story here in a rural area of China. As you enter into the village, this is what you will see. A billboard, not with the sexy models, but with the government-verified centenarians coming in to the village. These were the rock stars of the village. Here you can see the morning commute. Traffic isn't too bad. They're walking from their home to their area of land that they would farm. These were hand farmers. They were poor. They did not have the use of machinery or animals to help them farm. And here you'll see this woman. She can't be more than maybe 100 pounds, but yet she is carrying nearly a 70-pound load of vegetables on her back that she will carry up and down the mountainside and several miles to and from her place where she lives. Here is Ma To, at the time 98 years old. She would later go on to be one of the centenarians in our study, and she's preparing what looks to be a wheelbarrow full of wild greens. And this is what she and her family will eat for the day. Yes, in a day. There we go. Here you'll see the 7 centenarians in the village pictured in 2012. And they're not sitting in a nursing home cut off from society, but rather are there socializing and enjoying a meal together. And during our 5-year research initiative, we found no cases of heart disease, cancer, or dementia in this village. They were on no medications. And so if you look at this part of China compared to elsewhere, at least in the United States, what you'll find is based on their diet that they're eating, their total cholesterol numbers tend to be 70 points lower than what you'll see in the US. Their heart disease death risk, breast cancer death risk, dementia risk, atrial fibrillation risk is anywhere from 3 to 17 times lower than what you will see in the US population. And then in the Bama centenarian study, in this study, what we found is 76% of the centenarians are female. They're women, which is no different than most. 80% were felt not to be a burden on their family. 97% could independently use a squat toilet. Can I see by a show of hands, how many of you can independently use a squat toilet? There are a few. I know I've struggled. I've fallen in a couple of times as I've lived in Asia and traveled through Asia. 86% cognitively intact, and only 4% had any type of heart disease. Now, naturally, as a cardiologist, I was rather skeptical. How could this be? And so we then proceeded to do genetic studies on this group of people. And what we found is that their genes were no different than ours. They had genes that coded for heart disease, cancer, dementia, etc. But yet these diseases were not manifest. And what we later came to realize, and was the subject of our book, The Longevity Plan, is that we identified 7 lifestyle factors that allowed them to live these remarkable, long and healthy lives and not having their genes express these conditions. The first point is that they all had a very strong purpose. Even at 100 plus, they had a reason to get out of bed each morning, and that was for their family. They felt that if they were to pass, their family would suffer. They were there to provide for their neighbors. There was no concept of retirement in this village. And here you see 2 of the centenarians in our study, Ma Gan and Ma Xue, sisters. They're caring for the 5th generation so that her children and their children could work out in their plot of land. They ate a natural diet. They ate what they pulled out of the ground, what they pulled out of the river, or what they were able to forage. It was all naturally organic. If you wanted your sugar fix, it was a 7-day round-trip journey on foot over treacherous mountain passes to get your sugar fix. And so as a result, there was no sugar, no processed foods, no tobacco, none of the other tempting substances that we might take into our bodies. Rather, they ate a mostly vegetable-based diet, including tubers and wild fruit. They ate nuts, seeds, and beans each day. They ate a coarse rice because they couldn't, it was very high in fiber, somewhat similar to a brown rice because they couldn't mill their rice to make it white. And then they ate fish, small oily fish, high in omega-3s, that they'd pull out of the river once or twice a week. And here you can see my wife and my daughter working with some of the old timers preparing the food. Number 3, they were highly optimistic people. They embraced stress. Even at 100 plus, each one of them shared with us that they were living the very best years of their life, as you can see by the countenance of Ma Gan and I as sharing a laugh together. They had a strong community. They were connected. 74% of our centenarians lived in either a 4 or a 5 generation home. They were connected. Everybody felt cared for. They were physically active, but yet they did not exercise in what the Western concept of exercise is. There were no gyms, no cars. They walked everywhere. And just like this woman here, carrying heavy loads of vegetables from their plot of land back to their home to feed their family for the next 24 hours. They lived in rhythm. They worked during the day. They retired at night. They went to bed, got up at the same time. Family mealtime with family, friends, neighbors was critical. That was the part of the day they celebrated after a hard day of work. These people did not possess superhuman willpower. Rather, they lived a life with 0 temptations. They enjoyed these mostly plant-based, healthy foods that were harvested on the day that they ate it and didn't have to deal with all the hyper-palatable foods temptations that we have to here in the West. So I am now 57, and for the last 13 years, I've tried the best I can to follow this same 7 principles that we identified in our book in a Western environment as a cardiologist. And as a result, my weight has dropped 30 pounds. My blood pressure has dropped 30 points. My total cholesterol has dropped 93 points. All of my chronic medical conditions are now in remission, and I take no meds. And I do what I enjoy doing most when I'm not working, and that's skiing, running, mountain biking, hiking with my family. But the village has changed. As word has gotten out and spread through China about the remarkable health and longevity story of this village, busloads of tourists from throughout China come every day. Some are genuinely coming to learn, others are just coming for a photo opportunity. And all of these tourist influx is changing the nature of the community. They now have all of the good stuff we have, processed foods, sugar, whatever you want, you can have. And here is one of the centenarians in our study, Ma Kun. No longer is she out tending her garden. But what is she doing? She's sitting, waiting for the next busload of people to come, smile for a camera, and then collect a donation in these little red envelopes, while the 5th generation behind her is there sitting, watching a Western cartoon. Knowing that the wisdom was going to be lost and wanting to preserve it and feeling like as it helped me, it could help my patients, we set off on a 4-month experiment in the United States with my atrial fibrillation patients. AFib patients tend to be some of the sickest of the sick cardiovascular patients. AFib often runs with heart failure. It runs with obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, sleep apnea, the list goes on. I had 100 patients in the study that we conducted. 92% of these patients were able to faithfully follow the 7 principles of the Longevity Village. We had weekly socials. Every day they had to report to me as their cardiologist what they ate, how physically active they were, how their sleep went, what they did for stress reduction, and to state their purpose of why they were making these changes every day. As a result, most of these patients were able to get off of 1 or more medications. Most were able to put their atrial fibrillation into remission. How did it work? They had purpose that they connected with every day. We were able to eliminate temptations. If you have to confess everything to your cardiologist, who will then give you daily feedback, it changes behavior. And we had community. They did it together as families. We did it together as a group. Although weight loss was not part of the program, many of our people, like Lonnie and Larry here, enjoyed massive weight loss just by following the principles in the Longevity Village. On our last trip to the village, it was a hot summer night after a monsoonal rain season. The river was running exceptionally high, and many of the old-timers were sitting on the bridge, enjoying the cool breeze off the river, when suddenly it collapsed. At the time, I was running through the village, and they quickly grabbed me as I was the only physician anywhere nearby. And as I was running to the shore, I was wondering, how are we going to resuscitate them? I don't have any of the resources that I have in my hospital back home. But remarkably, every one of them, the 80-year-olds, 90-year-olds, even some of the centenarians, were all able to safely swim to shore with this overflowing river. The next day, we met with the district mayor, who told us he wanted to take the bridge down and replace it with something big and modern that would allow more trucks, buses, and cars to enter the village. The old bridge may be gone, and with it, the history, the culture of China's Longevity Village. Soon the centenarians will all pass with their changing modern lifestyle that they're developing. But what remains is the wisdom they left behind, and that wisdom has the power to change all of our lives. We can build our own bridge to a future without medical problems, without medications. Countless atrial fibrillation patients of mine have done it. Lonnie and Larry have done it. I've done it as well. And the only thing standing between us and a better, healthier life is taking that first step. It's never too late to change. Thank you.